we all have a 2-year-old inside of us that we just have to...
I've got twin 2-year-olds inside of me.
Welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, an entertaining chat show hosted by best-selling mystery and thriller authors Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey, in lively, humorous and informative conversation with distinguished guests who share their thoughts and experience about forging a successful author career.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Hope you're doing fabulous, just like my co-host, Mr. Douglas Pratt.
I'm always doing fabulous. I can't help it. I live in a constant state of fabulosity.
Fabulosity. That is it. That is the word of the week, people.
Fabulosity.
Use it liberally.
That's right, yes. Everybody should put that in a book. So,
yeah, as you run across people you haven't seen in a while, say, how's your fabulosity today?
Fabulosity? My fabulosity level, like you've got like all sorts of levels. I'm going to just have me a little level of fabulosity, and we should just rank everybody.
Well, you're 11 out of 10 every day.
You're so sweet. I'll put you at a solid 7. How's that?
I think I'd barely eke above a 4, but you're generous. All right. The show brought to you, as always, by the Fabulosity Impaled. No, that's the wrong word. It's not impaled.
Vellum is filled with fabulosity. That's what you're looking for.
There it is.
You have levels of fabulosity in Vellum that hit like 15 out of 10. So it's an amazing, yeah. So they got some cool stuff. We talked about like the, I don't have a Substack, but you don't have a Substack, but you could put like your Substack and your other social media in there with it.
Substack's a new one with one of the updates they did at the end of last year. And I didn't know that actually and just recently found out. But I have my Facebook, Instagram, BookBub, and Blue Sky.
You and 7 other people are on Blue Sky. So.
Well, no, there's actually tons of people on there. I just don't think they're doing very much with it. It sort of came out and it was like, okay, is this going to be a thing? Is this going to be a place? And it's, so I grabbed it and I don't want to be on some of the other ones. So I was like, okay. So anyway, yeah, it's lingering in the back.
I'm thinking about putting my MySpace on there, so I may do that.
You should have it on there. MySpace is making a big comeback.
It could. I bet the music that I had set on my MySpace is still playing because I haven't gone in there.
Still playing there. Yeah,
anything with it in 30 years. So, also, though,
anyway,
big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters out there. Thank you so much for popping in and joining us. And if you find you guys get any value out of this show, please jump on there. It's like $3 a month, and you get the just extra pictures of me and Nick just hanging out. Our other guests as we come in. Nothing overly fun.
There's no pictures on there. There's videos.
Video.
Of us
you just look at the
with
freeze
the
frame.
Extra
it's a freeze
questions.
frame of us. It's perfect. Yeah. So somebody might want to just look at us and throw us up as their screensaver.
Fabulosity is worth $3 a month. That's your $3 justified this month.
We should do the word of the day on there. That'd be perfect.
Boom. I've been doing kind of one of those on some of my social media posts, having interesting words. Yeah, we could do that. And of course, your subscription is tax deductible. Absolutely it is. It's educational.
I'm not sure that is. I don't know that we would take our tax advice from us. So.
Well, you are correct. I would not take tax advice from us, but I'm pretty damn sure that's tax deductible.
Okay, well, if Nick says it, he doesn't live in the U.S. anymore, so take your chances.
Exactly. Yeah, I live in a tax-free country now. So anyway, if you have any questions about it, Doug at douglaspratt.com and ask him. All right, so let's move on. Our guest today is the fabulous Adrienne Giordano. She's a USA Today best-selling author of over 40 romantic suspense and mystery novels, who also pulls from her vast experience in this biz to provide author and life coaching. So we'll chat with Adrienne shortly here. But first, a listener question from our recent guest, the wonderful Jane Friedman. Jane Friedman, you're a glutton to stick around a little longer, and you have a listener question for us. I'm a little scared here.
I do. I have been asking a lot of authors recently, self-publishing authors, how they are doing with direct sales. And if they haven't tried direct sales yet, why not? And one of the reasons I want to ask you both is because if you're in KU or reliant on KU, I've found that they might do a Kickstarter, they might do some type of pre-order process where it's available to everyone, regardless of how they shop or where they prefer to read, and then they will move into KU after that. So really, I'm just asking you, how are your direct sales doing and what's your take? Because it's such the popular thing to talk about right now. But I find it very hard to do. Like there are a lot of moving pieces to it.
There are, totally. Okay, so I do have in the last year started doing my pre-orders all wide, and thankfully I use Drafted Digital. They're super great about just launching everything at once, and then I just got to go and turn it off. And so I'll do a pre-order wide. My pre-orders generally run, as soon as I put the next book out, I'll set it a year out, but they'll run 6 months, and then the day the book comes out, I go in and turn it off on Drafted Digital, flip on that KU button, and I do. For my last two, I've actually done them pre-orders on my direct store. So I've had a direct store, but because I was in KU and it's such a balancing act to sell versus not, I haven't really taken advantage of my direct store. So I've started coming up with some new strategies in the last 2 months, and pretty pleased with what my sales are been at on my direct store. They're not anywhere near scraping the bottom of the barrel where I am on Amazon, but it is something, because to me, I wanted to build multiple avenues of revenue for that same reason. We talked about Patreon. I've started a Patreon last year. It is slowly building up. We have a Patreon for the podcast as well, but I have my own, and I'm trying to build other areas and using direct sales kind of as that purpose. So I am seeing some use for it. It is a slow burn. I'm trying not to get discouraged by it because I see it as an opportunity to continue to build an audience that I don't already have.
So for me, I live in the Cayman Islands. So I'm not going to be shipping any books to anybody from the Cayman Islands. It is cost prohibitive. I do have a VA in the States who's marvelous, and she's wonderful, but it's another layer of expense I would have to have in there. And the same if I use the fulfillment. So I have a merchandise store, which I do steady stuff through and works out great, but it's fill print on demand. So I don't have to touch it. So I could do that. And I've been thinking about options of doing maybe a Kickstarter, maybe some special editions. But as we were talking about in another section, because I've built my audience off of primarily Kindle Unlimited, the audience tends to be of fixed or limited income. That's why they're in KU, because they get value out of being in KU. And they're not spending this extra money, especially while we're in the uncertain environment that we've been in for a while now. So there's lots of people just killing it on special editions and doing extra stuff. I did a version of that based on one of my books recently and had some a vinyl LP record album made and pressed. I love it. It's brilliant. I haven't sold very many. So I've sold some, but not many. So my VA has this big box of vinyl LP that she sends one out every week or so. So I'm very cautious about venturing into that realm because right now, I don't think I've built my audience around the kind of people that are going to spend money on extra stuff like that. I want to expand into that. And that's why, Doug's ahead of the curve ahead of me on this, that he's venturing into different areas and trying to broaden that audience. But I think it's something that's very, very much, we've talked about it a lot, of trying to expand our audience out in towards that wide audience that is going to spend on more of the special editions and stuff. It's tricky. And
also we're thrillers, and less special editions don't do as well, I don't think, yet, as far as that realm. There's some that, like the Frida McFadden thrillers for sure can do that, but those are more different than action thrillers like we write. So
yeah, you don't see deluxe editions of nonfiction books just being put out all the time.
Yeah, right.
Because it's a similar problem.
Sprayed edges of how to mow your lawn.
It'd be cool if you could get like lawn clippings on the side of it. See, look at that. We're thinking I don't know who's going to read a book about cutting your lawn, but
Especially AI, look it up now. All right, that's a good place to end. Jay, great question. Thank you so much. Adrienne, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You've been on our shortlist for a long time from an author point of view, but also the coaching stuff that we're going to sort of focus on today. But give the listeners a bit of background on when you first got into writing and when you were first published.
So I think, like probably many of us, I have been writing since I was a kid, creating my little stories. And I always had the dream of being a published author, but life gets in the way, right? And you get your you get out of school and you get your big boy, big girl job and all that. So, but I was always writing. And I actually, when my dad got sick, I had taken a leave of absence from work, and I found myself, I was traveling back and forth. I live in the Midwest now, but I'm from the East Coast. So I was traveling back and forth, spending a couple of weeks there, a couple of weeks here. And I was bored. I hadn't had my son yet, so I was bored. And it was, my husband said to me, why don't you just work on this writing gig and see, you have the time. So I literally wrote my first book sitting beside my dad in a hospital room, it's kind of a bittersweet memory, but it probably all told took me 5 years to write that book because, you just keep going back over it and you're learning the hard lessons and all that. So my first book came out in 2010. And I'm primarily known for my romantic suspense, but I do some funny mysteries. I have a co-written series with Misty Evans. That's a serial killer, like cold case mystery series. That was a ton of fun. And I just dipped my toe into women's fiction recently under a pen name. So that was different.
Wow. You're covering some gamuts there to go from psychological thrillers to kind of cozies with a dog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My dog collar crime stuff. I love those books.
We're going to break you into some sci-fi next, huh?
Oh, gosh. Never. I could never write sci-fi. I give sci-fi writers so much credit because just the world building, all of that, I could never do that. I just don't have the brain power for it.
There's a lot. It's fascinating to me in fantasy and science fiction. All that world building seems really cool. Building it would be fascinating and fun, and then actually maintaining and sticking to it in the books would be a nightmare. All right. So when did you start branching out into doing coaching with other authors?
So I have always been involved in, different writing organizations. And, in the beginning, I got a lot of help from some really well-established authors. So it was always kind of I'm going to pass this on, right? Because they gave me time. So I've always worked with authors informally. And then I kind of got into coaching. It was sort of a backdoor thing because during COVID, like most of us, I had gained some weight and I joined Weight Watchers. And I would after COVID was over, I would go to the weekly workshops, and I had a really awesome coach in my workshop, and they were hiring coaches. And I thought, this would be kind of a fun gig that I could do, once a week, whatever. So I got the job. I applied and I got the job, and I still work for them. And that's what got me into coaching. And they give training with coaching, but I wanted to take it a step further because I really saw how this could help authors. I mean, it helped me just in my personal life. So I went back to school. I went to coaching school. Yeah, I got my certification, I think 2 years ago now.
As you've kind of approached this now, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing authors coming to you that they're hoping to solve? So if I've got tons of challenges, I just need to know which ones I need to come to you with, I guess is my question.
Well, and I think that's what's so interesting is it's so different for all of us, right? Some folks, it's time management. Some folks, it's just this business is so brutal and it has such a high rate of failure, and it's managing our expectations and just figuring out, how we move forward, right? Whether it's traditional publishing, whether it's the rejection, whether it's your indie publishing and you published a book and it didn't sell, and, just trying to figure out how you move forward.
Yeah, yeah. And you use a thing called the Wheel of Life. When I was doing a bit of research here, and I thought that was the Lion King. I didn't know what it was talking about, so I had to actually search it, and it brought up this. That's the
Could have been the
Circle of
Wheel
Life.
of
Yeah.
Time. That was like the Robert Jordan book.
Oh,
there you go.
I watched that series. Yeah, that was like a Netflix. Okay, so the Wheel of Life.
He digresses.
Yeah, I do digress. We digress a lot. So tell us about the Wheel of Life. What is it?
So the Wheel of Life is a coaching tool that it looks at different areas of your life, right? So, your family, your career, money, your significant other, your health. And it's a kind of a life balance tool, I call it, where you look at this wheel. I'm happy to give you a free load of it if your readers want to.
Great. We'll put it in the show notes. Perfect. Yeah.
I can give you a PDF of it. And what it does is it helps you kind of categorize where you are. You rate yourself from 0 to 10 in each category. So if you're working too much, if you feel totally overwhelmed by work, maybe it's a very high number. And it helps you, it gives you just a visual snapshot of maybe where you need to be paying a little more attention. Are you having enough fun in your life? And it really gives you a quick down and dirty.
Yeah, pretty much everyone's going to go no.
Exactly.
I really do have a lot of fun. I'm just kidding. I feel like you could always have more fun, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where, you rate it a 1 if you're dissatisfied, and it's a 10 if you're knocking it out of the park. So it just gives you, and we're never totally in balance, right? Life balance, it's never going to be a 50-50 thing with work and life balance, right? Because if we're on a deadline and we're pushing, whatever. So what it tells you is just in that snapshot, in that moment of time, where are you? And it can kind of help you figure out, like, if you're really feeling tired or exhausted or whatever, it's like, oh, well, it's because I'm spending so much time at my desk and not making time for my family or to have fun, whatever. So yeah, I do it a few times a year. Every time I get cranky, I pull it out and I do it because it just helps me. It's a self-check. Yeah.
It's difficult sometimes for us as authors, especially we work for ourselves, we work at home, isolated for the most part, to get that work-life balance, and like that's something Nick and I have talked about on a regular basis, where, we joked not that long ago that Nick's like, I'll keep working because instead of getting up to go to the bathroom, I'm just going to keep working all the way through it because the mentality is I got to keep working at it because this is what we do. And so we forget sometimes that we got to balance that out a little bit. So.
Yeah, and figuring out what you need to put in place to get out of the office, whether it's treating it like a corporate job where you go home at night, right? You close the door to the office because if you were working in a corporate setting, you wouldn't necessarily have access to that office, right? So it's just figuring out the little tricks that help you separate yourself from that, because it is super easy to do especially when you're, an indie pubbed author, because there's always something more to do.
That's that covers a couple of things that we were going to talk to you about. Is because for a lot of us, it's a home office. For me, my home office is actually in a corner of our bedroom, so there is luxury. No escaping.
I have,
yeah. My commute is 3 steps, so the good and the bad of that. So when you're talking with authors that are in that sort of situation, and as you mentioned, and we've talked about this before, in this business, we're never done, right? Because you're working for yourself. And in most businesses, you're working for yourself. It's kind of, you're never done. And when you do work for somebody else and you go to an office, there are a lot of jobs that require stuff after hours. But for most, you leave, you go home, and you have a personal life, and then you return to work within those hours. But we don't really do that. So what do you suggest for guardrails to help the authors with their timing?
Again, this is a totally individualized thing, right? It's about sitting down and figuring out what your habits are and what things you can put in place, right? So if you were a client and we were in a session, I would say to you, okay, so your office is in the bedroom. Are you happy with that setup? First of all, if you're not happy with it, what are the things you can put in place to help you separate that from your personal life to your work life, right? Because, and the thing with coaching is, like, I could sit here and give advice all day long, right? But it's not necessarily going to resonate with you because that's not your habits, right? It has to be based on the individual and what works for them, right? So that's where the work really comes in, is digging into how you feel about it being in the bedroom and what are some tricks and things that you can put in place that will help you to feel better about it if you are unhappy about it, and will help you to separate yourself from it.
For me, it's tricky because the other option is the living room, and my wife has her office in the corner of the living room, so we could trade.
Are you saying you can't share an office? Is that what you're saying, Nick? Or Cheryl can't share an office?
We live in a small place.
I get it.
There's no room to be actually side by side.
Yeah. So for you, it might be something like, okay, you can't physically change it because of the setup, but what can you put a screen in there or something? I'm going to give myself 10 minutes out of the room every, however often, right? So if you're not able to physically move from that space, what else can you put in place that helps you to separate yourself from it?
And that doesn't mean putting screens in the bathroom, Nick, so you can work in there too. So
yeah.
We have a little half bath. I actually looked at it when we first moved in. And I'm like, this is a waste. You only need one loo in the house. How could I convert this basically cupboard-sized space?
It even came with its own seat. You don't even have to bring in an office chair. You can just bring in a table, and then bam, you're ready to go. So
be a great little podcast booth, But
I mean, I have had authors say that they go out and they buy, some kind of a partition, because at night when they go to bed, they're looking at the desk and they're thinking about all the things that they need to do, and it's disrupting their sleep. So sometimes it's as simple as just blocking the view of the desk so you can't see it.
I'll face the other wall when I go to sleep. That might help.
Yeah, there you go.
Push it. You need a little Murphy desk. That way it'll fold up and be out of the way.
A Murphy desk. Instead of having a Murphy bed, have a Murphy desk.
Yeah. And then it's out of the way and you're like, oh, and I'm not even thinking, as if, like, I like that idea, because as if I need to look at the desk to be thinking about all the stuff that I'm thinking about anyway. So.
No, we just lay there, look at the ceiling and think about all the things.
We're laughing about it. Yeah, we're laughing about it, but I mean, think about how your brain would react to that, right? You're physically putting the desk up, right? It's signaling your brain that the workday is over, the desk is up, right? It's putting in, like, as you said, a guardrail that, okay, workday is over. For me, when I leave my home office, I close the doors, right? For me, that's enough for me that the door is closed and I don't come in anymore at night. Like, that to me is enough to signal it. So it depends on all of us as individuals. What's that thing that's going to click in our brain that workday is over, time to focus on whatever, my family, having fun.
So I'm going to sidetrack just a little bit, though, because I'm curious about something else. And it's something that I see all the time, especially with emerging authors and newer authors who are seeing, whose self-worth is suddenly tied to their sales, their rankings, any of that outside validation. What are some things you suggest for authors to do to set goals that they can actually control? And I think that's, sometimes we look at that like, I don't have any reviews and I don't have the ranking is not quite where it, and we start, especially some of us who hadn't been around for a while, some of us who've been around for a while already know that where we're at, we just still worry about it. But what are some goals we can do to kind of set that a little bit more manageable?
Absolutely. And this is a big thing for me. I actually do a goal setting workshop because, when you set these goals, right, we have different types of goals. Some of them are called outcome goals. So your outcome goals are, okay, I want to write a book, right? That's the big goal. Then you have what you call, they're also called result goals, right? They can be outcome or result goals. Then you have what's called a process goal. So the process goal, if you think of like just a regular ladder, your big goal is at the top of the ladder, right? But you're at the bottom of the ladder and you have to try and figure out, okay, how do I get to the top? The process goals are the rungs on the ladder. So if you have a ladder that has a lot of rungs, it's going to be easier to climb, right? So the process goals are all the little things you need to do to get that book written. So, maybe rung 1 is coming up with an idea. Maybe rung 2 is setting yourself a word count. Right? And it's setting these smaller, doable goals, because if you're just looking at, I have to write some books are 150,000 words, right? Like, in my genre, they're generally 95,000 words, right? So if you're looking at a 95,000 word book, that can be very overwhelming, especially if you're a newer writer and don't necessarily know how to get to that end. But if you set those smaller goals and you're hitting those smaller goals, it helps you build confidence and moves you to the next spot, right? So it's all about figuring out what the end goal is and then figuring out what you have to do to get there, what feels doable and not overwhelming.
Right. That's good. I love the ladder analogy. My biggest problem is I keep adding rungs to the top. So my ladder won't
Your ladder
end.
keeps getting longer.
Yeah. Isn't that the case at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what it is. We tend to do that as well, right? You accomplish one thing and then you just bump the goal out a little bit further, and it's finding something that'll.
Well, is that the same thing, Adrienne? I mean, you can kind of, is if, hey, think of it like running. I want to learn how to run. Because that sounds terrible, but I'm going to start off right. I just want to run to the end of the street, and then that's my first goal. But then because I made that goal, I think that's the other thing that like Nick's saying, he moves that goal, but it's also just a new goal altogether. I've made that first goal, so now I build the next goal, which is I want to make it a mile, or I'd never make it a mile, but I want to make it a quarter mile. Then I make it that far, and so you just kind of move it a little bit as opposed to the idea that you're moving the goal, you're just creating new goals. So.
Yeah. And what it does for you too is going back to the mindset stuff. It's about, my original goal, is to run whatever, the marathon, right? So my first goal was to run to the end of the block. I did that, right? And then it's, let me keep going. I can run to, rather than saying, I will never be able to run a marathon. It's, hey, I made it to the end of the block. It's a subtle shift, but it's looking at it in a more positive light, because we are 80%, and there's science behind this, 80% of our thoughts in a day are negative. So we are built to think negative thoughts. So we have to come up with ways to kind of combat that so we don't get mired down in it.
So let me ask you this, because also we kind of talked about this. A lot of new authors feel that way as you're kind of going into this whole goal setting and trying to keep that healthy. But also experienced authors like us who've been around for a while is there a way we keep adding not just new goals, but additional goals on top of that? And that's where I think sometimes we start finding ourselves becoming overwhelmed. At least I find myself, because I've let me add this on. I want to do this too now, because I've heard about Facebook ads, and I've also heard about Pinterest, and I want to write letters like David Virgats, and I'm nuts. So yes. So what is a way for us? Been around for a little bit more. We've got a lot more on our plate. We feel like we keep adding it to it.
So it's about prioritization, right? And picking anywhere from, say, 3 to 6 goals, right? 3 to 6 outcome goals. So 3 to 6 big goals. And then what that does is it helps you just to narrow down, okay, what am I working on right now? It's about what feels doable, and that's the thing. Like when I'm sitting down, because and as crazy as it is, as much as I love talking about goal setting, I don't love goal setting because it gets overwhelming to me, right? So I will stick to, okay, these are the 3 things I am working on right now. Then I determine, okay, when do I want to have this done by? Is this a 1-month goal, 3-month goal, 6-month goal? Like, what is this? And then it's just about, does this feel doable? Because we can set all of these lofty goals for ourselves, but then, what happens when we can't hit the goal, right? We start to feel crummy about it. And then that's when our mindset, takes a hit. So it's just about figuring out, is this doable for me? Can I physically write 5,000 words a day? If the answer is no, you need to adjust that goal, because if you're not hitting 5,000 words, you're going to be like, oh, I can't do this. I'm just going to quit.
Well, it's setting yourself up for failure, right? Yeah, and the word count thing. The word count thing is such a big deal in this industry because there's people that genuinely can sit down and mash out incredible word counts in short periods of time. And there's some that can do it for a relatively sustained period as well. And there's others that just don't work that way. And I think it's super important to find what works for you and understand that works for you, because it's super easy if you're plotting stuff out. And I know this because I'm a guy with an Excel sheet that plans out my writing for a year. It's super easy to put on that spreadsheet, you know what, I'm going to do an extra this or an extra that number of words. And you plan this out. And next minute, your schedule that could be based around pre-orders is locked into this thing that's unrealistic, right?
And that, again, if depending on if you're traditionally pubbed or independently pubbed, right? Because with indie pubbing, you're a small business owner, right? There's all these other, you have to get your cover done. You have to line up your editors, right? There's all these things that need to be done. So it does get overwhelming, and, figuring out what's doable, just asking the question, is this doable for me? And it just helps you, I can remember when I first started, I was part of an RWA chapter here in Chicago, and one of the more established authors gave a presentation, and she said, you need to protect your process. That has always stuck with me, because first you have to figure out what the process is that works for you. And then when you do figure it out, you have to really stick to it. Like for me, I know I have to do my pages first thing in the morning, because if I don't, all the other stuff that goes on in my brain is just going to hijack my brain, and I'm toast. So I'm usually done with my pages by 10:30. And I literally schedule my days around that, because that's my process.
I think the majority of writers kind of operate that way, but that's not the same for everyone. I've spoken to some people that have to get the business stuff cleared out of, they clear the slate so their mind's open to the creative side of things, which is, my brain doesn't work that way. It kind of works it sounds like yours does, but it's interesting how everybody is different, and you've got to recognize that.
Well, yeah, and there are people who are gonna. I'll say there's people who are gonna. You don't want to fit. I don't want to think just because, hey, writing first thing in the morning works for you guys means I should have to do it too, because that may not be me. I may not. I may be it's midnight and I can write from midnight to 2 in the morning, and that's when my brain is the best. Could be. And if that's your process, like you said, I think that's something that we oftentimes say. Well, so and so said he's walking on the beach and dictating 1,000 words every 15 minutes. So I need to do that. Well, that doesn't always work for you. So that may not be your mindset. So.
Yeah. And, you can try it. And then if it feels good, okay, I'll add this to my, my process. If it doesn't feel good, you move on to something else. But, I think it's just having that confidence to lean into what works for us and what doesn't work for us.
We all kind of fall foul of the comparisonitis, right? So that has to be something you spend a lot of time talking about with folks you coach.
And it really comes down to what's doable for us. Does it feel doable? Does it feel good? I think a lot of times, too, we don't pay attention to the signals our bodies give us, right? When something just doesn't feel good, we tend to just, oh, I can push through it, I can push through it, right? But there's a lot to be said for, when our instincts are telling us something.
Yeah, there's a reason that we have those. So we need to kind of start listening to them.
My son played baseball all through college, right? So talk about a game of failure. And I often say to him, baseball and publishing are similar games in that they're both games of failure, right? So he's a college coach now, but I had developed a mindset workshop for baseball players. And one of the exercises that I make them do in the workshop is I make them think about somebody that they admire and respect. And then I have them say, whoever that person is, that person doesn't like me. Coach doesn't like me. Coach hates me. And I make them really pay attention to how that feels in the body. It blows their mind every time, because they're taking that moment to just pay attention to how their body is responding to the negativity. And I think it's such an important part of all of this mindset is just paying attention to how we feel about certain things.
One of the other things we've talked about a lot, and we always talk with our author friends a lot, is, we laugh about FOMO, that fear of missing out. And one of the things that, 10 years ago, there weren't many resources, especially for an indie author, to pull from to know how to go. The tools were less. Now we've got these brilliant things like Vellum and all these kind of things that make our job so much easier. But what comes with all these resources we can tap into is FOMO. There's so much. You can be inundated, and there's experts everywhere in every subject, right? Do you have any advice for helping, especially emerging authors, filter some of that?
Well, and again, it's about prioritizing and figuring out a plan, right? When you are totally overwhelmed, what's the first next best thing I can do? Because if you can break it down into smaller, doable chunks, it doesn't feel so overwhelming. So, if you're faced with, 10 different workshops to take, or 10 different classes on Facebook ads, right? It's about, okay, of these 10, can I break it down to 5? And then can I break it down to 3? And then can I break it down to 2, right? Just a step at a time, just making it more manageable.
Let me ask you this, though. What is something you're seeing, that's one major blind spot that you see authors make, or these mistakes that they make again and again? Both newer and experienced authors, it's kind of nice, to know what blind spot I need to be watching out for too. So
I don't know that it's necessarily mistakes. It's figuring out the things that trigger us into negative thinking, right? The habits that we have that may not be serving us. And again, it's going to be different for all of us, right? And I'm just using this as an example, right? Maybe we get feedback from an editor, and maybe the feedback is a little negative, and it trips us into that, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be a good writer because of this. Instead of looking at it from the standpoint of, well, okay, maybe this will make me a better writer. And this is where the hard work really, because this stuff is not easy to do, because for a lot of us, the negative thinking and the habits we have around negative thinking have been ingrained since childhood. It's about figuring out what those triggers are and how we can deal with them.
One of the things, my former life was race cars and race car driving, and for a long time I coached and taught in that. Then it has its days, believe me. Yeah. But one of the things I kind of came away with overall is especially in teaching, is you're teaching a process. You're teaching the person a process to get from A to B. So you're not necessarily, there's a lot of things you could do to teach, especially in a sport like that. And you use baseball analogies, teach people the techniques of swinging or pitching or what have you. But the most important lesson that everyone has to learn is how they personally build a process to get from A to B. And I found that's one way of looking at it that you can start. If you believe that you have the skills to put in place a process to learn and improve, then it kind of gets you away from going, well, man, I can't do a lap as fast as that guy. Well, you didn't today and you might not be able to tomorrow, but do you think you can analyze the data and work on yourself to get there?
I have a quick question, Nick. If you're a racetrack, wouldn't that just be from A to A?
I worked in rallying too, so no.
Okay, sorry.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Okay. Adrienne, please continue with something sensible to say.
Well, and like to your point, that's where it comes into the what's the next best thing I can do right now, right? Is figuring out what is that one small doable step. And then you do that one small doable step, and then you figure out what's the next small doable step. It just helps to take some of the overwhelm out of it, especially when you're looking at writing a book that's 150,000 words. Well, if I can't get 250 words down, how am I going to get to 150,000, right? So then the goal becomes, let me just write 100 words.
Yeah, rungs of the ladder. That's great. I love that analogy. So let me ask you this. Let's put you on the spot here. What's your personal biggest challenge that you find that you have to constantly work on to overcome as an author?
Without question, am I good enough? Is it good enough? Is the work good enough? And it will probably be a lifelong challenge for me. I've learned some, I've used the tools, I use the goal setting, but it's, and I don't know if it's just something that's inherent with a creative career. I just did an article for Nink because I turned in a book. I'm a hybrid author. I have a traditionally published books, and I have, my own stuff that I do with indie pubbing. And I turned in a book around the holidays, and I was on deadline and I was pushing, and I was just exhausted when I turned in the book. And then after I turned in the book, instead of having that feeling of like, oh, I did that, I was, wow, I'm done, I got it turned in, I went into full panic mode. It was like, what if she hates it? What do I have? I just spiraled because I was so exhausted. And I learned something about myself that, okay, I need to watch out for this now. Next time, that to have a conversation with the 2-year-old inside me that says, take a minute, relax, you're freaking out over nothing.
I have that conversation with my 2-year-old self all the time. It's usually...
I think we all have a 2-year-old inside of us that we just have to...
I've got twin 2-year-olds inside of me.
We just have to have a conversation with the 2-year-old.
So if we have an author listening today who might be feeling like their 2-year-old's kind of scattered, discouraged, maybe unsure about what they're doing or what to focus on, what's a game plan or what's something you would tell them to do over, say, just the next 7 days to get themselves kind of on the right mindset path?
I think, too, it depends on what the situation is, right? If it's bad editor feedback, if they're, having a writer's block or whatever, it's, again, figuring out what's the thing that's going to get me moving, right? So when things are going really well and you're rocking along, what is in place for you that is making it work? And can you replicate that, right? So it's about just that moment of mindfulness of thinking back to, okay, when things are really going well, what's happening around me? And figuring out, okay, well, this is why this is not working for me. Maybe there is something that's not in place that needs to be in place.
Well, this has been outstanding. Thank you so much for giving us some time. And we'll put the links to the Wheel of Life in the show notes and to your coaching and your books and all that good stuff. And we've got one more question for you here. We have a wheel of questions.
I'm ready.
Doug's going to spin the wheel.
Oh my gosh, I love the wheel.
The wheel is Amazing.
Have I mentioned how much I love to play roulette? So, like, I love the wheel. Yeah.
Black. Okay. Well, you kind of already answered it, but we're going to ask, what's the first thing you do in the morning?
Actually, the first thing I do is I have a 110-pound shepherd mix that he and I go for a walk first thing in the morning. Before I have coffee, we come downstairs, we put our shoes on, and we go. And I do that. Even we tromp through snow. It's for me, it's just the fresh air. I think it's the thing that triggers my brain to know, this is the start of the day. So yeah, we go for a walk every morning.
Besides pee, that's usually the very first thing. But
yeah, well, yeah,
that's your contribution.
I mean, I'm just gonna say, but coffee. I'm gonna start my coffee and then go. Like generally, what I do first thing is if I don't have to walk a dog, which sometimes I do, but if I don't, then we'll just get up and do my Wordle first thing in the morning and do my Wordle and my little and my wife Ashley and I will do our little puzzles together, and then I do Duolingo, and then I jump into whatever I'm working on that day. So, Nicholas, what are you up to?
Well, I was just going to suggest what you might want to do is get out of bed, then pee. That's going to probably improve the start of your day.
No. I've got it set up. I've got a little vacuum system. It's all perfect. I don't even have to move.
That's more than we all wanted to know. I'm coffee.
As much as we laugh about it, again, we have these neural pathways in our brains, right? So these little habits that we have can sometimes trigger us to know, oh, it's time to start working now.
Yeah. Those routines can really help. Adrienne, thank you so much for spending the time with us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Big thanks to Adrienne. That was cool.
Oh, yeah, man.
Good conversation. Important conversation, right?
I think that's something we do, and we've talked about this a lot. Mindset, just being overwhelmed by everything, because there's so much that you have to do in this business to keep up with what's going on, just to put a book out. You got to get the words down. Like she said, you have so many different goals. It's one to finish the book, one to get all the stuff done, to get edited, and then get it ready to publish. And it can be a long thing, and we can often just be inundated by it. So I don't know, you and I both talked about this before, so.
Can be a lot, yeah. And I think we've got a few shows have come out and will come out about this mental approach to the game and staying the course and staying strong in the course and using the support that's available.
There are a lot of seasoned authors who have gotten out of it because it's just become too much of overwhelming. This is, it's which is sad, and any job can be that way. You've got to be able to balance everything. Imposter syndrome. That's another thing that
your boat just sink.
No, if it just rocked to the side and everything went to one side. Sorry about that.
I thought we lost Doug there for a second.
Yeah, no, everything just kind of shifted all at once. It was like, it was
recorded live, folks. Recorded live, no doubt.
Couldn't get the video of it, but that's perfect.
The video would have been gold, man, because the look on your face was like, oh, shit. All right. Well, this was a good one. Big thanks to our Patreon subscribers. Lovely bonus from Adrienne that's in that bonus. So if you think you get value from the show, guys, nip on over to Patreon. The Two Authors Podcast is the extension, and subscribe. There's a free level. You can check out some stuff.
Yeah, but it's only $3.
For only $3 a month.
$3 a month.
$3 a month.
You can keep Nick and Doug fed and housed.
You can keep us in fabulosity.
Fabulosity. That's right.
Absolutely. Big thanks to our friends at Vellum. Thank you guys for the support. And if you're looking for your formatting solution, Vellum is the one. Nothing better out there, people.
It's the best. The best. It is fabulosity emboldened.
Oh, no. Wait. That's what I did. And I said something even worse than that. In the beginning, you said, that's badly using that word.
No, I still made it.
And it's your word. You're the judge of the word.
Emboldened fabulosity is.
Oh, okay. That's not what you said, but that's good. I like that one. That's a catchphrase.
Well, no, earlier it was fabulosity, emboldened. But this time I said emboldened fabulosity. It means the same thing. It's just I just rearranged the wording. So
thank you, Vellum. Anyway, I will be back. Until next time, be cool to each other.
Sorry, I'm still adjusting from the boat. Fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the Two Authors Podcast with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt. Subscribe on your favorite platform, for new shows coming every week.